Greetings, my fellow frivolous sovereign thinkers. Thank you for tuning in to LO3 Podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful, swampy mangroves of South Florida. And today's date is Wednesday, June 17th, 2020. Yeah, I was just having dinner yesterday at a downtown saloon in downtown Fort Lauderdale. Got my computer up and running. Been a little bit lackadaisical, not getting the actual plug for it, and I finally did. And of course, ESPN, they had like 5 segments, like a little over an hour, stating in reference, which is in reference to the whole Chuba Hubbard, Coach Mike Gundy ordeal of wearing an OAN shirt, which stands for One American Network. Hubbard claimed it's right-wing extremism and all that. So he called him out, and he's so proud that he stood up for what was right. Woo! I am now a man. I was going to sit out the rest of the season until you apologize for wearing that shirt. Talk about sensitivity 101. And some of his teammates were offended as well. Please. That doesn't make you heroic. You had no merit. It was pointless. Instead of calling your team the Cowboys, it should be called the Pacifiers. Yeah, very juvenile indeed. How old are you? Possible early 20s? Probably 20, 21, I'm not so sure. You're not 2, you're not 5, we're not at a daycare center. You're at a college university. Yeah, there should be a big pacifier now representing Oklahoma State University football team. I'm not here to condemn or hate them for what happened, or even Mike Gundy apologizing. Should get a couple more, send them some apples with a polishing rag. They don't know what tyranny is or being offended. You better stop. I recommend everyone over there, especially over there, including Mr. Hubbard, with all due respect. Stop listening to those synthetic organizations. You are participating in a New World Order coup. Now I know that for a fact. Someone wearing I've seen a shirt as part of the whole One American Network. And I'm not a fan of it in general. I observe responsibly. I don't manifest over it. And you know what? You shouldn't be wearing any other shirts that pertains to treason and tyranny, such as Black Lives Matter. And don't get me wrong, there's some awesome people in that movement, a lot of rank and file. But if they really know what they're about, you treat them like the Ku Klux Klan, the American Nazis, and the ADL. They're all the same. I figured this out over 30 years. Make it 31 to be exact. These little Mickey Mouse clubs. And people get sensitive because he wore, a gentleman wore a shirt which is considered right-wing conservatism. Come on. Explain to me, Mr. Hubbard. They did an actual footage of a town in Idaho, western northern Idaho. Because they heard about some of the rioters wanted to go and loot their town, and the people were there. The people of that town. Black, white, Hispanic, doesn't matter. Unified as one. There were no Nazis in that town. They stood for what was right. So I don't know where you get your education from, but I'll tell you one thing. It sucks. Do yourself a favor. Think before you speak. Before calling out people and trying to get your 15 minutes of fame on ESPN. And I'm not saying this out of malice or spite, but in good faith. So, if Oklahoma State University loses every game of the season, will we blame on Hubbard? Some people probably would. But I'm not going to go there. Because actions like this may curse themselves. People are really good at that. Shoot themselves in the foot. They can take that little juvenile exhibition somewhere else. Because it's contaminating space. I recommend listen to the man like Dr. Walter Williams. He knows all about these things. And I wouldn't be surprised if he calls you out. He's black, by the way. So there's no racial tension by any means. Only the principles. Bottom line is, free speech is more important than your feelings. Not just for you, Mr. Hubbard, but for everyone else that finds things offensive. If you can't handle it, you should stay in your cave. That's everyone in there that's listening right now. Pacifiers are for babies, not grown adults. Enough said on this issue. Had to do a little rant. And here's something that's more important than a person, a football coach, wearing an OAN shirt. This came out yesterday by John W. Whitehead, president of the Rutherford Institute, which I'm a member of, by the way, supporting member. So, it gives me the honor on narrating his article, his commentary. The system is rigged. Qualified immunity is how the police state stays in power. What has been most striking to me is just how one-sided the rules are when Americans take on their own government. It's been dismaying to learn the extent to which rules and laws shield the government from accountability for its abuses, or even law-breaking. It's been a long and frightening lesson. The rules seemed rigged to protect government lawlessness, and the playing field is uneven. Too many processes favor the government. The deck is still stacked. That's by journalist Cheryl Atkinson. And she's right. The system is rigged. The system is rigged. The government is corrupt. And we, the people, continue to waste our strength by fighting each other rather than standing against the tyrant in our midst. Because the system is rigged, because the government is corrupt, and because we, the people, remain polarized and divided, the police state will keep winning, and we, the people, will keep losing. Because the system is rigged, and the Supreme Court, the so-called People's Court, has exchanged its appointed role as a gatekeeper of justice for its new role, its maintainer of the status quo, there will be little, if no consequences for the cops who brutalize, and no justice for the victims of police brutality. Because the system is rigged, there will be no consequences for police who destroy a private home by bombarding it with tear gas grenades during a SWAT team raid gone awry for the cop, or who mistakenly shot a 10-year-old boy after aiming and missing the non-threatening family's dog, or for arresting the officer who sicked a police dog, or sicked a police dog on a suspect who had already surrendered. This is how unarmed Americans keep dying at the hands of a militarized police, by refusing to accept any of the 8 or its or so qualified immunity cases before this term. It strove to hold police accountable for misconduct, and the Supreme Court delivered a chilling reminder that in the American police state, we the people are at the mercy of law enforcement officers who have almost absolute discretion to decide who is a threat, what constitutes resistance, and how harshly they can deal with the citizens that they were appointed to serve and protect. Yes, thought police, right? This is how qualified immunity keeps the police state in power. Lawyers tend to offer a lot of complicated, convoluted explanations for the doctrine of qualified immunity, which was intended to insulate government officials from the frivolous lawsuits. But the real purpose of qualified immunity is to rig the system, ensuring that abusive agents of the government almost always wins, and the victims of government abuses almost always loses. How else do you explain a doctrine that requires victims of police violence to prove that their abusers knew their behavior was illegal because it had been deemed so in nearly identical case at some prior time? It is set up for failure. Do you know how many different ways a cop can kill, maim, torture, and abuse someone without being held liable? The cops know, in a large part due to training classes that drill them on the art of sidestepping the Fourth Amendment, protects us from being bullied, badgered, beaten, broken, and spied on by government agents. This is how we the people keep losing. Although the U.S. Supreme Court recognized Harlow v. Fitzgerald 1982 that suing government officials for monetary damages is the only realistic avenue of holding them accountable for abusing their offices and violating the Constitution, it has ostensibly given police and other government agents a green light to shoot first and ask questions later, as well as to probe, poke, pinch, taser, search, seize, strip, and generally manhandle anyone they see fit in almost any circumstance, all with general blessing of the courts. Whether it's police officers breaking through people's front doors and shooting them dead in their homes, or strip search motorists on the side of the road, these instances of abuse are continually validated by a judicial system that kowtows to virtually every police demand, no matter how unjust, no matter how in opposition to the Constitution. Make no mistake about it, this is what the Constitution constitutes law and order in the American police state. There are the hallmarks of a police state where police officers, no longer mere servants of the people entrusted with keeping the peace, are part of an elite ruling class dependent on keeping the masses corralled, under control, and treated like suspects and enemies rather than citizens. Unfortunately, we've been traveling this dangerous road for a very long time. A review of critical court rulings over the past several decades, including rulings affirming qualified immunity protections for government agents by the U.S. Supreme Court, reveals a startling and steady trend toward pro-police state rulings by an institution concerned more with establishing order, protecting the ruling class, and insulating government agents from charges of wrongdoing, than with upholding the rights enshrined in the Constitution. Indeed, as Reuters reports, qualified immunity has become a nearly fail-safe tool to let police brutality go unpunished and deny victims their constitutional rights. Worse, as Reuters concluded, the Supreme Court has built qualified immunity into an often insurmountable police defense by intervening in cases mostly to favor the police. The system is rigged. Police can claim qualified immunity for warrantless searches in Anderson versus Creighton. The Supreme Court ruled that FBI and state law enforcement agents were entitled to qualified immunity protections after they were sued for raiding a private home without a warrant and hold family members at gunpoint, all in the search for a suspected bank robber who was not in the house. Police can claim qualified immunity for warrantless arrest based on mere suspicion. Assume, correct? In Hunter versus Bryant, the court ruled that police acted reasonably in arresting James Bryant without a warrant in order to protect the president. Bryant had allegedly written a letter that referred a third party to plot to assassinate President Ronald Reagan, but police had no proof that he intended to harm Reagan beyond a mere suspicion. Charges against Bryant were eventually dropped. Police can qualify immunity for using excessive force against protesters. In Salzier versus Katz, the court ruled in favor of federal law enforcement agents who forcibly tackled a protester that he attempted to unfurl a banner of Vice President Gore's political rally. The court reasoned that the officers acted reasonably given the urgency of protecting the vice president. Yeah, that guy sucked anyway. Police can claim qualified immunity for shooting a fleeing suspect in the back. In Browser versus Haugen, the court dismissed a lawsuit against a police officer who shot Kenneth Haugen in the back as he entered his car in order to flee from police. The court ruled that in the light of existing case law, the cops conducted fell in the hazy border between excessive and acceptable force, and so she did not violate clearly established law. Police can claim qualified immunity for shooting mentally impaired person. In the city of San Francisco versus Sheehan, the court ruled in favor of police who repeatedly said Teresa Sheehan during the course of a mental health welfare check. The court ruled that it was not unreasonable for police to pepper spray and shoot Sheehan multiple times after entering her room without a warrant and encountering her holding a knife. Police officers can use lethal force in car chases without fear of lawsuits. In Plumhofer versus Rickard, the U.S. Supreme Court declared that police officers who used deadly force to terminate a car chase were immune from a lawsuit. Officers were accused of needlessly resorting to deadly force by shooting multiple times at a man and his passenger in a stopped car, killing both individuals. Police can stop, arrest, and search citizens without reasonable suspicion of a probable cause. In a 5-3 ruling in Utah versus Stiriff, U.S. Supreme Court effectively gave police the go-ahead to embark on a fishing expedition of one person's property, rendering Americans completely vulnerable to the whims of any cop on the beat. Police can stop cars based on anonymous tips or for suspicious behavior, such as having a reclined car seat or driving too carefully. In a 5-4 ruling, Navarrete versus California, the U.S. Supreme Court declared that police officers, under the guise of unreasonable suspicion, can stop cars and question drivers based solely on anonymous tips, no matter how dubious and whether or not they themselves witness any troubling behavior. Then, the State versus Howard, the Kansas Supreme Court dictated that motorists who recline their seats are guilty of suspicious behavior, can be subject to warrantless searches by police. That ruling, coupled other than court rulings upholding warrantless searches and seizures, police renders one's car a constitutional free zone. That's the biggest lie ever. Okay, one of the greatest lies. Americans have no protection against mandatory breathalyzer tests at a police checkpoint. Although mandatory blood draws violates Fourth Amendment, Birchville versus North Dakota, police can also conduct sobriety and information-seeking checkpoints. Illinois versus Lester and Michigan Department of State Police versus Sitz. Police can forcibly take your DNA whether or not you've been convicted of a crime. In Maryland versus King, a divided U.S. Supreme Court determined that a person arrested for a crime who is supposed to be presumed innocent until proven guilty must submit forcible extraction of their DNA. Once again, the court sided with the guardians of the police state over the defenders of individual liberty in determining that DNA samples may be extracted from people arrested for serious offenses. The end result of ruling paves the way for a nationwide dragnet of suspects targeted via DNA sampling. Police can use fear for my life rationale as an excuse for shooting unarmed individuals upon arriving on the scene of a nighttime traffic accident on an Alabama police officer who shot a driver exiting his car, mistakenly burying the wallet in his hand to be a gun. A report by the Justice Department found that half of the unarmed people shot by one police department over a 7-year span were shot because the officer saw something like a cell phone or some action take, like a person pulling at the waist of their parts, misidentified it as a threat. Police have free rein to use traffic sniffing dogs as search warrants on leashes. In Florida versus Harris, the unanimous U.S. Supreme Court determined that police officers may highly use unreliable drug sniffing dogs to conduct warrantless searches of cars during the routine traffic stops. Ruling turns man's best friend into an extension of the police state, provided the use of canine unit to take place within a reasonable amount of time. Rodriguez versus the United States. Anything about the case of Florida versus Harris? You could say in the state of Florida, the dog sniffing the person's car, warrantless search, violates Article 1, Section 12 of the Florida Constitution, which is a equivalence to the Fourth Amendment. Okay, just to let you folks know. Not only are police largely protected by qualified immunity, but police dogs are also off the hook for wrongdoing. The Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled in favor of a police officer who allowed a police dog to maul a homeless man innocent of any wrongdoing. Police can subject Americans to strip searches no matter the offense. A divided U.S. Supreme Court actually popularized making his life easier for overworked jails officials over the basic rights of Americans to be free from the basic strip searches in its 5-4 ruling in Florence versus Burlington. The court declared that any person who is arrested and processed at a jailhouse, regardless of the severity of his or her offense, i.e. they can be guilty of nothing more than a minor traffic offense, can be subjected to a strip search by police or jail officials, which involves exposing the genitals and the buttocks. This license to probe is now being extended to roadside stops as police officers throughout the country have begun anal and vaginal probes without any evidence of wrongdoing and without a warrant. Police can break into homes without a warrant even if it's a wrong home. In an 8-1 ruling in Kentucky versus King, the U.S. Supreme Court placed their trust in their discretion of police officers rather than in the dictates of the Constitution when they gave police greater leeway to break into homes or apartments without a warrant, despite the fact that the police in question ended up pursuing the wrong subject, invaded the wrong apartment, and violated just about every tenet that stands between us and a police state. The court sanctioned the warrantless raid, leaving Americans with little real protection in the face of all manner of abuses by police. Police can knock and talk tactics as a means of sidestepping the Fourth Amendment. Aggressive knock and talk practices have become thinly veiled, warrantless excuses by which citizens are coerced, not intimidated into talking with heavily armed people who knock on their doors in the middle of the night. Andrew Scott didn't even get a chance to say no to such a heavy-handed request before he was gunned down by police who pounded aggressively on the wrong door at 1:30 in the morning, failed to identify himself as police, and then repeatedly shot and killed a man when he answered the door while he is holding the gun in self-defense. Imagine if you do that to a police if they're making love to their wife and girlfriend. Would they like that? Absolutely not. Police can recklessly open fire on anyone might be armed. Philando Castile, who was shot, killed during a routine traffic stop, allegedly over a broken taillight merely for telling police he had a concealed weapons permit, concealed and carry permit. That's all it took for police to shoot Castile 4 times in the presence of his girlfriend and her 4-year-old daughter. A unanimous Supreme Court declared County of Los Angeles versus Menendez that people should not be held liable for recklessly firing 15 times into a shack where a homeless couple had been sleeping because they grabbed his BB gun in his defense. They were fearing they were being attacked. Police can destroy a home during a SWAT raid even if the owner gives their consent to enter and search it. In West versus Winfield, the Supreme Court covered the police after they smashed windows on Shannon West's home, punched holes in her wall and ceilings, and bombed the house with so much tear gas that was uninhabitable for 2 months. All this despite the fact that the suspect they were pursuing was not in the house, and West, the homeowner, agreed to allow police to search the home to confirm that. Big mistake. Never, ever do that. How one person did that, let them in, got tired, and they handcuffed the person for allegedly burglarizing the home, but let them in. Oh, well, all this time. See, that's what happens when you start. Never assume. You gotta be vigilant, folks. I gotta keep on going here. Police can suffocate someone deliberately, inadvertently, in the process of subduing them. Can't Breathe has become a rallying cry following the deaths of Eric Garner and George Floyd, both of whom died after being placed in a chokehold by police. Dozens more have died in similar circumstances at the hands of police who have faced little repercussions for these deaths. As I make it clear in my book, Battlefield America, The War on American People, we are dealing with a nationwide epidemic of court-sanctioned police violence carried out with impunity against individuals posing little or no real threat. So the answer, what's the answer to reforming a system that is clearly self-serving and corrupt? Abolishing the police is not the answer. That will invariably lead to outright anarchy, which will give the police state and those law and order zealots an incentive it needs to declare martial law. Okay? So if you support defunding the police completely, this can backfire. That's what he's saying. Looting and violence are not the answer, as Martin Luther King Jr. recognized. A riot merely intensifies the fear of the white community while relieving the guilt. Using the looting and riots as justification for support police brutality is also not the answer. As King recognized, it is not enough to condemn riots without at the same time condemning the contingent, intolerable conditions that exist in our society. These conditions are the things that cause individuals to feel that they have no other alternative than to engage in violent rebellions to get attention. And I must say tonight that a riot is the language of the unheard. And what it is America has failed to hear. That's the question. It has failed to hear that the plight of the Negro poor has worsened over the last 12 or 15 years. It has failed to hear that the promises of freedom and justice have not been met. And it has failed to hear that large segments of white society are more concerned about tranquility and status quo than about justice and humanity. Reform is necessary and police reform is unnecessary and unavoidable. If we are to have any hope of living in America in which freedom means something more than a right to stay alive, but how we reform the system is just as important as getting it done. We don't need to wait for 9 members of a ruling aristocracy who primarily come from privileged backgrounds and whom have a vested interest in maintaining the status quo to fix what's broken in America. Nor do we need to wait for 535 highly paid politicians to do something about these injustices, only when it suits their political ambitions. And we certainly do not need to wait for a president with a taste of totalitarian tactics to throw a few crumbs in our way. This is much a local problem as it is a national one. Be fair, be nonviolent, be relentless in your pursuit of justice for all. Let's get it done. Like I said before in the past, start from the bottom up, the local level. You can do a lot of research in your town on how they do things and bring it to the platform. Talk to these individuals. Petition. Have a little caucus with your group and how to arrange it, and everyone start going there speaking about it. Nothing's gonna happen overnight, my friends. But they need us more than we need them when you look at it. Yes, technically the police aren't obligated to protect you, but why give them the power on harassing you? And I'm not here going after the police as a whole, but when it comes to tyranny, I call it all out. Everyone's a victim of it, one way or the other, of tyranny, to be exact. And this is more essential than someone wearing a One American Network T-shirt. And hopefully Mr. Hubbard and Mr. Gundy will listen to this show. Share it with them. That's fine. Won't bother me one bit. I'm critical. I laugh because I do see it petty. But this is the bigger picture. And everyone over there, even the students at Oklahoma State University, should really focus on this also. Because tyranny affects all of us, regardless of your race, color, creed, etc. So hopefully everyone out there will do their part and do it on principles. Nothing more, nothing less. All right? I'd like to thank everyone for listening. Plus, feel free to download and share us throughout your social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, or may send something that's interesting you want to check out, whatever you do, please send your correspondences with decorum. Furthermore, I'll leave the footnote of this article on my Spreaker page. If you want to donate, you can hit me at paypal.me/LokiLuck3. Once again, thank you for your time. Plus, always remember that demoniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Keep on spreading the love, and may your guardian spirits be with you.